Hi, to all panelists, please just remember to turn on the camera because we're going to start in 1 minute. Vale, si estás por ahí también, por favor, ya activen la cámara y quiten el mute del micrófono.
Hola, sí, ya está viniendo.
Uno. ¿La cerramos?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're waiting for 1 more minute to get Vice President Marta Lucia, and we'll get started, okay? Bear with us 1 more minute. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. We're going to get started as soon as the Vice President joins us. She should be joining us very soon. Please bear with us 1 more minute and we'll get started. Okay, thank you again for joining. We're going to get started really soon.
Hi, this is Yadir Salazar. Nice to meet you. The Vice President I'm the Chief of Staff of the Vice President.
Yep.
Yes.
Vice President?
Yes, I'm hearing you. How are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Let me get started and welcome everyone. My name is Roberto Simoe. I'm a Senior Director of Policy with American Society Council of the Americas and a politics editor with America's Quarterly magazine. I'm thrilled to be moderating today's panel on improving women's access to finance for a post-COVID recovery. Before I introduce this very distinguished panel that we have today, let me just go through a few reminders. This event is public and on the record. We will have time for questions and answers from the public at the end of the discussion, but please feel free to send us your question throughout the event. If you're joining us via WebEx, you can use the Q&A feature. If you're joining us or if you're watching via the webcast, please send in your questions using the handle @ASCOA. This event is generously supported by City Foundation, and it's part of a series of events that we're doing on how to close the gender gap in Latin America by 2030, which will culminate in the next issue of America's Quarterly on this very same topic that will come out in October. So stay tuned. There's a lot to discuss on this topic. COVID-19 has highlighted how critical women's access to finance is for Latin America, right? Almost half of Latin American women still lack a bank account. And without one, it is much harder for them to access aid programs and to enter the formal economy. Credit has been absolutely crucial to keep companies afloat amid this unprecedented economic shock, but we know that businesses owned by or led by women still have a much harder time securing credit, securing loans. And even when we look at top business leaders in the region, according to a recent IDB studies, fintechs with women in very senior positions tend to receive 15% less funding than their male-only competitors. This is a very daunting scenario, but at the same time, crises create big opportunities. And we have the opportunity now to put this issue front and center in the debates about post-COVID recovery. We're very fortunate to have this outstanding group of panelists today, starting with Madam Vice President Marta Lucia Ramirez from Colombia. Madam Vice President has an incredibly distinguished public career, having served as a senator and as a Minister of Defense and Trade. We also have with us Susana Garcia Robles, who's the Executive Advisor to LAVCA, the Association for Private Capital Investment in Latin America, and a venture partner at CAPIA. Prior to that, Susana was the Chief Investment Officer and Gender Initiatives Coordinator at IDB Lab. And last but certainly not least, we have with us Reina Irene Mejia, who's the CEO of City Honduras. Reina has been with City for over 2 decades, and she's also a member of City's Global Diversity Network. I want to start this conversation by trying to first frame the problem that we have in front of us. And I'm going to go around the virtual room with the exact same question. And I'll start with you, Madam Vice President. This issue of gender disparity when it comes to access to credit is certainly not new in Latin America, right? And we have been discussing this for several decades. Why is it so hard for us to overcome this? For us, I mean for Latin America. If you had to mention 2 or 3 structural challenges for us that you face in Colombia and other countries in the region also face, what would that be? And thank you again for being with us today.
Okay, thank you, Roberto. Let me thank the Council of the Americas and my friend Susan Siegel for organizing this very important event. And I would like to thank really your commitment always in bringing important conversations with the countries of our region. And of course, I would like to thank my fellow co-panelists, Mrs. Reina Mejia and also Mrs. Susana Garcia, both of them very important to share experiences and our views about how we can close this gap against women in Latin America. COVID-19 has resulted in the world's economic, employment, social, and humanitarian crisis also since the Great Depression. But in every corner of the world, women were already in disadvantage in terms of education, career opportunities, wages, financial inclusion, and access to technology. It was from ever. This is not only because of COVID-19. All of these differences, of course, are exacerbated by the burden of unpaid work and family care. And of course, this burden has increased significantly since the start of the crisis, further jeopardizing women's economic empowerment and employment. Women in Latin America and Caribbean face structural and cultural barriers that have prevented them of financial inclusion, have restricted them for financial exclusion. While access has increased in terms of opening of savings accounts and digitalization has increased, those are accounts that are only being used for acceding to government's transfer programs. Other financial services need to be deepened, but it's clear that there are big barriers. Let me highlight three. First, the feminization of poverty and low income. Women are mostly employed in low productivity sectors, and despite the reduction in income poverty, women and men have not benefited equally. Women are overrepresented in poor households. Second, the lack of financial education. There are important gaps at the international level, which persist even after taking into account marital status, education, income level, and other socioeconomic characteristics. These results have important implications since women tend to live longer than men and to interrupt their professional careers due to motherhood, which leads to different saving needs. And third, of course, machismo and gender stereotypes that identify the masculine as linked to the world of finance and with expertise in terms of money and investment associated with the image of the supplier men, and therefore distrust towards women regarding the abilities to promote and to manage successful businesses. This is a barrier in the field of commercial or productive loans. These barriers restrict them in the type of products they can access in the financial sector. According to the IFC, a member of the World Bank, only 10% of women in small and medium-sized companies are entrepreneurs, and they have access to financial services in order to make growth their businesses. In Colombia, 82.5% of adult men have access to some financial product compared with only 80% of women, for a gap of almost 4 points. The largest financial gap faced by women continues to be concentrated in access to credit, which is accessed by a lower percentage of women and due to lower average values. Colombia has a cabinet with gender parity, but this is not enough. We are working so hard with President Duque in order to promote right now access of women to credit loans, but also we are working in order to promote women as entrepreneurs. And this is our most important goal in this government, how we can make women entrepreneurs be successful, how they can have their long-term business models, and how we can give them technical assistance and different aspects of this sustainability of their companies and entrepreneurs. So maybe in the second question I can develop a little more about this, because we really believe that the only one way to reduce the gender gap is through access to companies, through access to become real entrepreneurs. And I would like to share with you what are we doing in this purpose here in Colombia. Thank you, Roberto.
Thank you so much. Reina, let me ask you the same question. The Vice President mentioned a few very important things: financial education, gender stereotypes. From your perspective, having had such a successful career in banking, what are the 2, 3 critical or structural challenges that you see for increasing access to finance for women? Thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you, and thanks Council of the America for the invitation. It is an honor for me to be here and to share the panel with such great women. And just let me compliment on what Ms. Vice President mentioned. According to the World Bank data, 30% of the reduction in extreme poverty in Latin America and the Caribbean between 2000 and 2010 is attributable to women increased participation in the labor force. The region has the world's highest rate of self-employed women. However, 70% of these women lead small and medium enterprises. If they apply to a bank loan, they usually fail. Around 70 to 73% they fail. And the rest that obtains an approval, it's burdened by high collateral and high guarantee requirements. While women are found in a range of entrepreneurial activities, many tend to be concentrated in micro, small, and medium enterprises. Why? Because of the gender bias, because of the lack of collateral and capital, and access to technical assistance, finance, education. So if you're asking me why, I will mention these 3 and mention a little bit on each one of them. According to the IDP study, found that men are more likely to receive loans than women, despite the information of their loan application being the same. This finding has huge implications for female entrepreneurs in Latin America. As the region continues to fight COVID and entrepreneurs seek financing to keep their business running, it is not a secret that gender discrimination in Latin America is very present. It's still there. Despite the strides that have been made over the years, there are still significant rooms for progress. So COVID can really slow down and can even take a step backwards on what we have achieved. And let me tell you that this is not unique for Latin America. A similar studies conducted in the United States found that the average loan for a female entrepreneur is 42% less than the male entrepreneurs. So that's when I mentioned gender bias, and this might be conscious or unconscious bias. Sometimes we don't even know. When I was discussing this with my husband, he said, "No, but I don't think so." And I said, there are some things that are unbiased, and we're not, that are unconscious bias, and we don't realize it. So the other point that I mentioned before, Roberto, was lack of collateral and capital. Women lack of a formal credit history and collateral also constrain them. A gender-neutral regulatory environment can lead to gender-differentiated outcomes, where women are more disadvantaged than men in starting or managing a business. For example, a woman is less able to afford a long and expensive registration procedure. The World Bank has highlighted that the majority of female lead business work in retail and service sectors, as mentioned before, and they make less money. They are, as of now, more affected by COVID. As a result, the inability to get funding from traditional sources like a bank or a nonprofit organization supporting, the entrepreneurs are less likely for a woman. So they have to go and get financing from family, from friends, and to finance, their own startup companies, or sometimes money that they have savings that it's in this segment is very hard to start a business with savings. So gender inequality continues being there. So, as mentioned before, some progress have been made, some legislative progress have been made. However, the guidance, the support of these women in legal on finding what their rights might be, or provide them, support on how to start their own business, how to keep, the self working. It's not there. So Besides the gender bias, besides the lack of collateral and capital, including the support that they might have from legal, from accounting, from going through all these processes, then we have the access to financial program services. Women's access to all financial services, including savings, insurance, remittances, transfer, and credit, is very key and is essential to allow them to benefit fully from the economic opportunities. Legal, institutional, and social barriers often limit women access to these services. As mentioned before, initiatives have been taken by financial institutions, governments, and but we're not there, Roberto. We're not there, and we need to increase access to women entrepreneurs to financial instruments. And now, post-COVID, and post-COVID is crucial. Special programs for developing women entrepreneurs, including also regulatory framework, regular banking services, debt financing, in order for them to prosper themselves. So it's, there's still challenges ahead of us, and hoping and working on that these gaps might not be even bigger than what they were before COVID.
Thank you. Let me bring Susanna to this conversation. I think we have now a long list of structural challenges, Susanna. And you're the last one to speak. I'm sure you would repeat a lot of what have been said in terms of technical challenges, psychological or social challenges, political challenges. Thank you again for joining us. What do you see, if you had to add one or two structural barriers that women still face at all levels? We were discussing here how it is hard to open a bank account, to get a small loan for a small business. You also work at the very opposite end with venture capital, etc. How do you see the landscape nowadays?
Thank you, Roberto, and the Council of Americas. Very happy to be in this panel. I have to tell you that even though the picture can be quite bleak, not only in Latin America and the Caribbean, but globally, actually this is now seen from my hats in LAVCA and CAPIA, global ecosystems. We could be talking about Africa. We could be talking about many other emerging markets and also non-emerging markets. Financial inclusion is the key to empower women, because when you empower women, you are empowering their families. And that's why it's so crucial to improve their access to financing, because women tend to think holistically. They are not only thinking about themselves. When they venture thinking on how to improve either the environment or a social challenge in their communities, how to give more to others and to their families. I think, what has been highlighted, I couldn't agree more, but from the point of view of venture capital, I want to highlight 2 or 3 roadblocks. I think women historically have been lagging behind in being entrepreneurs. We have been perceived for many years as just having what is called as lifestyle companies that we want to have just to have a better lifestyle, to send the kids to a better school, to have vacations. And we have not been perceived as ambitious as men. There are 2 studies that while I was in the IDB, we did on these issues, We Grow and We Insights, in which we show very clearly that women are as ambitious and as focused on returns as men, but perception many times works against us. I think also that the reality is that for many, many years, we were not choosing careers perhaps that were conducive to more impactful and dynamic ventures to be created out of them. Our networks tend to be more family and friends related, whereas men tend to have more professional networks. They have, in a greater percentage, gone overseas to study, and they go back to their countries with the universal network. So when they want to venture, they have a better soundboard to test their ideas. So the virtuous cycle that we see that male entrepreneurs have had from being an entrepreneur, having a success at a company, selling the company, starting another company, selling the second company, becoming an angel investor, many of them creating their family offices and then giving back to the community and beginning to support others. We have not seen it yet in too many women in the region. It's just starting, and later on I want to talk about two initiatives I co-founded to change that. But I also want to make sure that we really have to focus on the disparity between the perception of men versus women. We are looked at being less savvy when it comes to finance. Here, Rain is a very good example. That is not true. We usually are perceived like if we are presenting a venture, the questions that are asked to us are more on the risky side, and how are you going to prevent this risk rather than give us your big picture. And there is a study by Dana Cancel from Columbia University that talks about having studied hundreds of pitches that women and men entrepreneurs did to investors, and the majority of the investors, of course, are still male. You could draw an incredible parallel between men being asked questions related to growth, to scaling up, very ambitious, very really in tune with, you have a great vision, how can we help you with our money to scale up? And then comes the questions to women are, but this is too risky, and do you know enough about your business, and how do we prevent A, B, and C? So that is also important because, as we all know, venture capital is not the panacea for everything. So at some point, women may need more venture debt, and that's where the banks fail women. Because I would say a criticism to women is that maybe we tend to ask for less money than we should, and men tend to ask for more money than they should. And the happy medium would be better for both. But in general, we don't get those loans. We don't get the bigger loans, and we don't get the loans related to venture debt. And I think this will also make us lag behind. But I also have to say, I've seen a lot of improvement, especially in the last 10 years, on the venture capital aspect, and I'm looking forward to telling you more in the next session.
Great. Let me go back to Vice President. And Madam Vice President, you referenced the fact that Colombia has a cabinet with full gender parity. Colombia also built a council of business women to advise the presidency on policies that could help on numerous of areas, including access to finance. You have been personally involved in several of these initiatives. My question to you also, drawing on your enormous experience in Congress, you talk to politicians in Latin America, and I think they will all agree that this is a critical topic. But getting them to act and to pass legislation and to take meaningful action is sometimes very difficult, right? How can you shape the discourse? How can you frame this question in a way that drives real policy change, be it in terms of more loans or public banks more engaged with women at the bottom, trying to open a bank account, or more clear policies for business women, more successful business women to be kind of level the playing field with men? How can we really change beyond good intentions?
Okay, Roberto, thank you so much. Let me say, first of all, that I really believe in empower women. I am clear about the changes that it could bring to a society if we empower all women. And that's why I asked President Ivan Duque when we had our primaries to compete for the presidency of Colombia. I told him, if you go first or if I go first, we have to do an agreement. We are going to have the first parity cabinet in Colombia. And this is something which is very positive because 100% of the Colombian cabinet is working right now in gender parity, is working in order to empower women. And we have the first national development plan that has one chapter which is focused in gender parity and, of course, in empower women. So that's why we are working in different scenarios simultaneously. I mentioned before some of our ideas about financial inclusion, but we are working also in all these political field, in all these different policies in different members of the cabinet in order to include women with real and concrete opportunities. So I also create this presidential advisory board of business women in order, excuse me, to strengthen first of all this advice to the president of Colombia in order to understand what are doing women in businesses, how are they having some restrictions, how we can promote them. For example, government procurement. This is a very clear area, and I'm working on that with the head of this agency, which is called Colombia Compra Eficiente. They are in charge of government procurement, and now we have this kind of additional qualification for companies that are owned by women. But this advisory group of women, they are helping us with these ideas about how to promote women in order to participate in this productive value chain in different sectors of the Colombian economy, in manufacturing sector, in services, in agrobusinesses. Let me tell you that we are doing something that I feel really proud because now we have to create these linkages between women who are in businesses, very sophisticated, and also women who are in the rural areas. And we want to promote these women in the rural areas and to help them to become real entrepreneurs. So I also ask all the associations of a business community in the rural areas, for example, the Coffee Association, the Cacao Growers Association, the Cattle Association, in order to help, in order to provide this coach to women in the rural areas who want to become entrepreneurs in these specific activities. So the women who are in businesses are helping me to provide coach to those women in the rural areas. It's not enough to have the associations supporting them. It's not enough to have some loans of credit to provide them with these financial resources. Now we need women giving a coach to all of them. But the second very important role that these business women are doing right now is that I ask them to help in a program which is called Amadrinamiento de Alcaldesas. It means that they are giving coach to mayors, women mayors in very small municipality. So this is a mentorship program for these women mayors, and it's focused on linking the private sector with the public sector, in linking women in business sector with women in politics, and a member of the council acts as a consultant of a mayor female. The purpose is to help them to structure their economic projects, focus on women, and also is focused in helping them to have a better success on their development plans for these very small municipalities, helping them in order to create some programs to attract a private investment to their small municipalities. So we are trying to help women to be successful in different sectors of the Colombian economy and in the Colombian activities. Now we have 40 business women mentoring 40 women mayors, and we will have in a short time, hopefully, all the 130 women mayors of Colombia being mentored by one of the Colombian business women. So this is something that it's new, and we feel so proud. This is something that we are building day by day. At the beginning, everybody was so happy just with the picture. And I said, we are not for pictures. We have to understand that before COVID, we have a very difficult situation for women. But after COVID, it's becoming worse. So we have to create these solid linkages between both women in the business community and in the public sector. And we also have a strategy which is supporting women entrepreneurs, and this is donating the business women time to act as mentors of women entrepreneurs in small and medium-sized companies. This is also interesting, and I don't know if we have enough time because I would like to share this idea of a trust that we just create because I know that Susan, which is in the Association of Private Capital Investment, she will be very interested. But if I have time, it's okay. If not, I'm going to send you all the information because it's going to be it's going to make a big difference for women entrepreneurs in Colombia.
I'll go back to you with another question, and we can certainly explore that. Let me go back to Susana, and just for everyone following us, we're starting to receive a few very good questions. Please feel free to send us your question via the Q&A feature if you're following us via WebEx. If you're on social media, do use our handle at ASCOA. Susana, I think the Vice President touched on the elephant in the room here, which is COVID-19, and how COVID is changing a lot of our understanding on numerous topics, including this particular topic on access to finance for women. You worked a long time for the IDB, for multilaterals. Now you're with LAFCA. Are we seeing something completely new, or are we seeing the acceleration of processes that were already in place? And if you look ahead, how do you think the discussion will evolve right now, the policies, etc.?
Well, let me tell you that even before I joined the IDB, my life was always dedicated to training women on leadership issues. So I was on the NGO part of the spectrum. Then I joined the IDB, and from 1999 on, I did a little bit of microfinance, and then I went right into venture capital, building ecosystems and the industry. And now, being now in CAPRI and in LAFCA, I continue doing that, building the industry, because I believe that venture capital is a good tool to provide access to financing. And within LAFCA, we have specific initiatives highlighting women entrepreneurs and highlighting their ventures. And in CAPRI, we are the gender parity organization with women and men as partners and in the management. What happened for me is that, in a way, you're looking at a region that per se is always in a crisis mode. Now is the very first time in which the whole humanity is going through a crisis with different levels of intensity and different timings. When some parts seem to be doing better, others seem to be doing worse, and then the ones doing better go back to doing worse. And that has created an impression that everything has been now put under a magnifying lens. So problems as well. So being a very optimistic person, I do think LATAM can handle this crisis maybe better than people like, me living in the US. We have never experienced before going to a supermarket and not finding basic things like toilet paper, for example. But in our countries, we know what it is, the want and the need. So we are entrepreneurial in that sense, and women even many more times because women have it in their DNA to be more holistic. As I said, they are looking for ways to embrace what happens and make the best out of the situation. So I think COVID has been putting a strain on women, of course, when it comes, for example, to the whole issue of the schools being closed. And on the other hand, this is the first time I've seen men, fund managers, men, telling me during a Zoom, if I leave at some point, sorry, but today is my day to do the homework with my kids. And I think that has been a small victory. But on the other hand, we also know that still the majority of the workload has fallen on women. But I do think that in this instance, in venture capital, I've seen a lot of women entrepreneurs coming out with very good companies, whether they are on the edtech space, on the health space, and fintech, and beginning to attract different awards, different investments. I've seen also that because of so many years and many times pushed by my former institution, the ADB, but also the big consultancies like McKinsey or Deloitte, there is a whole body of research saying that when you ignore half of the population in the world, you're going to lose and you're going to miss out of returns. So I've seen a lot of even venture capital funds that before when I started it was unthinkable. Now investing in teams with women co-founders or having women in their partnership. And, you know, I can name at least 15. I will highlight the precursors. NXTP was one fund, a regional fund that nobody or hardly anyone was focusing on this. They did it and they had a co-founder woman, Marta Cruz, and then many others follow, Magma, Dila, Cometa, Adobe, many all over Latam. So I'm being very positive about that. But I also have to say that the DFIs have, the development financial institutions, a huge role to provide the initial support, the research, the ecosystem building. But what I've seen now with a lot of pride is that other initiatives that come more from the private sector can build on that and can really mainstream it. And I want to talk very briefly about two of my ventures. Even within the IDB, as an intrapreneur, I founded WeExchange 8 years ago with one of the consultants there, that today she's in Germany and is a fintech entrepreneur. And we saw that we needed to create a platform for women in technology ventures. And they needed to network, to be put to do a pitch in front of investors, to be put in touch with mentors, to be given training. These 8 years, we have seen the growth of the number of women entrepreneurs in technology, and not only the typical 5 countries of Latam, but everywhere, and in the Caribbean as well, of course, because entrepreneurship knows no geography or socio-economic status. It's all about giving the access, and then it doesn't matter where you are from. And then last December, with Marta Cruz, who always was a great support to WeExchange, she and I co-founded WeInvest, which is the other side of the coin. It's a grouping of women investors in Latam that they are not only exclusively investing in women, but are beginning to change the ratio, as we call it in LATCA, hashtag change the ratio, and being there as investors. And we know that when women and men are together in a room analyzing ventures or funds to invest in, diversity will win. And this group has more than 100 people, is growing every day. And we are also providing training tools to those women investors. And we are also doing a lot of speed dating between the two groups. WeExchange, the entrepreneurs, with WeInvest, the investors. And I think that's the way that we are trying to make an industry that traditionally, and in the US very much so, is very unequal, try to bridge the two sides of the equation, showing that there are incredible cases of women entrepreneurs, and also that those cases are very focused on scaling up, on getting returns, but are also full of impact and benefits for the communities where these women are.
Let me get Reina into the discussion. Reina, you have a lot of experience not only in Honduras but also in other Central American countries. How do you think COVID-19 will change the way big financial institutions deal with the issue of doing a better job regarding gender disparities? Do you think, again, it will create new issues or new strategies, or it's much more about deepening what existed before? What is your take, and how are you dealing with this on your daily work at the bank?
Yes, Roberto. Actually, the pandemic is an opportunity to implement overdue changes. COVID has certainly exacerbated a lot of the societal challenges in Latin America, particularly around economics and gender equity. Domestic violence cases have significantly increased across the region, and women participation in the labor market has decreased, which helps establish their financial independence. Actually, has also decreased. So you can say that women has been one of the most affected through pandemic. I mean, we can see on the newspapers that the economic impact, that societies have been damaged, that we need to start the economic recovery, but you do not see on the headlines news women financial situation has worsened. You do not see on the newspapers that 70% of the entrepreneurs and small and medium enterprises that are being damaged are led by women. So before the pandemic, around 30% of the women-owned businesses in the region were financially constrained. So with this pandemic, with this situation, this comes towards to make the situation worse. And in a climate of reduced credit supplies and mounting requirements for guarantees or collaterals, they will be affected. So economic response and recovery programs must be included for the solutions, but they have to be also directed through gender perspectives, okay, including implementing a specific financing or collateral programs down to the line that they help reduce the risk perceived by financial institutions when working with female entrepreneurs. We recently did have, we in the region are mainly institutional clients, so we support the entities that go directly to the end user, to these women. So we have to get to work, and we continue working with the International Development Finance Corporation, what it was previously OPIC, doing financing specifically for small and medium entrepreneurs and with women on their leadership. So we need to keep supporting these programs to help women to continue working and maintaining financially afloat their businesses. Also, increasing the number of women in top management positions within the banking sector will provide a more diverse perspective that inform recovery reforms, educate on bias, and reduce them. I know that people say, no, I'm not biased, and that has happened to all of us. But there is a lot of unconscious bias that we need to be trained, and we need to be self-conscious out there in order to move forward. Okay, the significant constraints women face in accessing finance and representation decision making in the formal sector must be specifically addressed in financial sector reforms. Also, in the in there should be like a mandate to better resource effort in improving women's education and health. It's the key. You need to have education, you need to have health, and they need to be gender moving constraints from more and better employment, removing barriers to women ownership and controls of assets, enhancing women voice and agency. I mean, they need to be advised on all the processes, on the legal process, on the administrative process, and a recent survey performed by the IDB found that women in Latin have disproportionately affected in the labor market as they are overrepresented in the hardest hit sector, as we mentioned before, like services, education, tourism. Recovery policies will need to address gender gaps and whether the response to this pandemic can strengthen or weaken gender bias norms in regard to labor and access to the finance. So it cannot be traditionally what we've been seeing before. Before women were responsible, and they're still do at that, like caring for children and the elderly, and often are viewed as remaining in charge for caring for the ill as well during the disease outbreak. Now that a lot of places were working from home, women had a lot of had to maneuver and juggle with more things in their plate. Women are likely experience a significant burden on their time given to multiple care responsibilities. Not only at home, now you have schools at home. So it makes it a little bit harder for them to continue moving forward. So I think they should make programs that provide technical assistance are much necessary now after post-pandemic. So we need to do more than what we were doing before. We need to adjust. We need to be more on what is needed and no more of what we can do and what we've been doing.
Thank you so much. I'm going to kindly ask everyone to keep your mics muted when we're speaking to avoid background noises. And we received some very interesting questions from folks following us. I'm going to start with a question to the Vice President. This question came from William Corredor, and it's about how the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution plays into this, knowing that STEM will be a game changer. Science, technology, math skills will be absolutely key for the jobs of the future. How this discussion on how you train younger women to join this new economy intersect with access to credit, and be it finding an employment on a fintech or acquiring certain skills that will make this person earn more and have a better qualification and a stronger career. And how do you see the situation, particularly in Colombia, of course?
Okay, thank you, Roberto. First of all, let me say that during COVID-19, we have this evidence about the gap between women and men in digitalization. This is clear that very few women are able to use the technology and to be completely independent using the technology. Sometimes women, they depend on their own children. Sometimes they depend on their advisors or people in their offices now that they have to work at their homes. So, of course, it's clear we need to promote women in STEM careers, and this is something that we need to do with young women. Let me say that a few months ago, like 5 or 6 months ago, I was in a big auditorium, and I mentioned for young women, for teenagers, which is the most important in order to decide their careers, is to be clear about their values, about their wishes. How are they going to feel successful, and also how are they going to be realized? So you have to choose the career that makes you feel full with yourself, with your values. But let me say that you have to move to these STEM careers because there are going to be more opportunities for you in the new economy through these STEM careers. I had a mess. So many people criticized me because I was trying to promote women as engineers, mathematicians, whatever. And it was difficult for me because many people have a bad reaction. But I really believe we cannot continue creating this gap between men and women precisely because women are not educated in all these areas that are going to provide them better career opportunities. I would like to have so many women, of course, as doctors or physicians or psychologists, but many, many, many women more as engineers and many women in the financial sector. So let me say that, yes, this is a game changer, and we have to train now all the women in also in other careers. For example, we just created in Colombia a Ministry of Science and Technology. It was created only 6 months ago. We have a woman as the head of that ministry. She's an Afro-descendant woman, and it's so important that she and myself, we are promoting different invitations to young women to become part of this science sector, how they can be more clear about opportunities that Colombia have through bioeconomy, because all this biodiversity that we have in our country can create big economic opportunities, not only in the clean energy, but also in medicine, pharmaceuticals, different because of this diversity in the Colombian economy. So we are working on that, how to promote more women in technology, how to invite more women and more teenagers to science in order to have this knowledge value added for the Colombian future economy. And we need to have women entrepreneurs in those areas in order to create more richness in our economy, in order to create more GDP, more economic growth, more opportunities for everybody. So this to be a big difference. And let me say that just a final idea. Let me say that the OECD.
But you're going to complain, I know.
Okay. Let me say that the OECD countries, but there are so many different studies and analysis. For example, Christine Lagarde, she promotes different studies in the International Monetary Fund, and all of them shows that when women are in these STEM careers, they have a good and successful careers. And of course, 60% of women right now in development countries are not having access opportunities to the technology and to these areas because the lack of knowledge, the lack of being part of these STEM careers. So we are working in order to promote more and more in Colombia.
Thank you for that. We're almost running out of time. We have time for one last question that I'm going to put to you, Reina. There's a question about fintechs and how they can be a tool to reduce disparities, but I would enlarge the question to include all kinds of technologies that banks are using, be big data, AI, to help have a fair assessment of risks and profiles in general. Are they a solution, or can we eliminate also other biases that we know that algorithms may have? Can we explore this for a positive change? And I'm going to ask you to be very succinct since we only have 2 minutes and we'll have to stop the event.
Yes. Well, the rapid rise of digital technologies in recent years presents a valuable opportunity to create efficiencies and increase transparency and accountability while providing greater financial access and inclusion. And as you mentioned, one of the things highlighted by COVID crisis has been the importance of digital finance, period. Accessibility and innovation will be crucial moving out of this pandemic stage, Roberto, and has to be a driver for new innovative credit risk analysis, as well as simplifying time-consuming and tedious process, definitely. By putting more focus on real-time solutions, gender-blind data. Technology can help us cut off gender bias. As we discover new approaches to serving women, there are lessons can be learned from fintech startups, specifically on how they aim to create more client-centric financial services offering. I mentioned that before. We need to do what the client wants. We need to be more client-centric than offering what we do and what we know how to do. So over the last few years, countless fintech startups have launched, and many things can be taken from there. I mean, there is a momentum, for example, that focus on the female entrepreneurs, that they need to connect with like-minded mentors who can guide them through these challenging times of starting a new business. So we have set up also new goals and plans that meet through inclusion, outreach, education, sustainability. Has to have a greater, impact through globalization. So trainings and development, internal and external, are crucial. So yes, it is. Technology has to play a significant role moving out of this pandemic scenario, Roberto. It is a must.
With that, let me thank the Madam Vice President, Reina, Susana. Thank you so much. Again, this is a topic that we'll continue to follow and try to do our best to move the needle in a positive direction. So stay tuned. We'll have other events on how to close the gender gap in Latin America in the next decade. We'll also have the Americas Quarterly next issue dedicated to this topic. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for the panelists.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.